Hi, I'm Jake, 32, and last month my life blew up in a way I never saw coming. It started at 7:42 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was halfway through pouring milk into my cereal when I noticed the envelope on my doormat. No postage. Just my name written in the same shaky cursive my dad always used when writing checks. That was the first red flag. The second? I hadn't spoken to my father in over 5 years. Not since the funeral. I opened it like it might explode. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper. "You deserve to know the truth," it said. "Check the attic." No signature. No return address. No context. And yet my knees locked, my breath caught in my throat, and my heart sprinted like it remembered something my brain hadn't caught up to yet. I didn't even change out of my work clothes. I drove 3 hours straight to the house I grew up in, the one I swore I'd never set foot in again. The same babe paint peeling off the siding. The same dead porch light. The same awful silence. I still had the key. That's how screwed up this whole thing was. I never gave it back. I slipped in through the back door like I was 17 again, sneaking in after curfew. The air smelled like dust, mildew, and something older. Something rotten. The attic stairs groaned under my weight. I hadn't been up there since the night I found out what my sister did. I pulled the chain for the bare bulb. Yellow light flickered on. Boxes stacked haphazardly, some collapsing into themselves. One caught my eye, Jake, 2007 scrawled across it in red sharpie. Inside I found yearbooks, some old action figures, my first baseball glove. And then, under a pile of comics, a small handheld camcorder. I blinked. I hadn't seen that thing since high school. The battery was long dead, but the charger was in the same box. That's how my dad was. He saved everything, even the chargers no one ever used. I charged it in the garage. 10 minutes later, I was sitting cross-legged on the cold concrete floor, the screen flickering to life. There were 5 videos. The first one was labeled Basement, November 2007. I pressed play. And I stopped breathing. The grainy footage crackled to life, timestamp November 3, 2007, 10:27 p.m. The camera had been set down on something, maybe a stack of old board games, facing the corner of our unfinished basement. I recognized the sagging futon. The pile of laundry no one ever did. The water stain shaped like Florida on the cement wall. Then I saw myself. 15-year-old me, pacing in front of the camera like I was trapped. My hair was longer, my shoulders slumped inward, a nervous twitch in my left hand. I kept glancing toward the top of the stairs. You could hear it in the background, muffled shouting. My sister's voice. Sharp. Commanding. Followed by my dad's, flat and exhausted. Then the thump of something being thrown. I flinched on screen. I leaned in closer. My younger self sat down in front of the camera and looked right into the lens. "If you're watching this," he said, "then she finally pushed it too far." The kid on screen swallowed hard, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "I know I sound crazy. Dad says I'm being dramatic. Mom won't even talk about it. But it's real. I don't know what else to do. Maybe this video will help. Maybe someone will believe me one day." He leaned forward, whispering like he didn't want anyone upstairs to hear. "She takes my stuff. My drawings, my school projects, burns them. She waits until I've worked on something for weeks, then ruins it. Like she needs to make sure I don't feel proud of anything." My stomach twisted. "She told Mrs. Pritchard I've been stealing from her purse. Said she caught me. I didn't. I swear. And now they believe her. I'm grounded. Again. Because of her." The kid's voice cracked. He looked scared, but not surprised. "I found something in her room," he said quietly. "Something she's keeping hidden. I took a picture. If anything happens to me, check the shoebox under her bed." The video ended with the sound of the basement door opening and a shadow appearing at the top of the stairs. "Jake!" she shouted. The screen went black. I sat in that garage for a long time, camcorder in my lap, heart thudding like it was trying to claw its way out. My palms were sweating. My stomach felt hollow. That wasn't the Jake I remembered being. That was a kid already halfway broken. And apparently, he'd hidden evidence. I didn't even hesitate. I shoved the camcorder into my backpack and ran back inside, straight up to the second floor, my feet hitting the stairs like gunshots. My sister's old bedroom door was still shut. The doorknob had a crack in it. I put that there once, slamming it shut when she locked me out of the house in the middle of a snowstorm. I pushed it open. Everything inside was untouched, frozen in amber. Her lavender-scented perfume still lingered in the air, mixed with the sour tang of mold. Posters on the walls. Jewelry hanging from the mirror. Her bed, perfectly made. Like she'd come back any minute. I dropped to the floor, heart thudding, and reached under the bed. My hands scraped against dust bunnies, forgotten socks, and then a shoebox. Black Converse logo, taped shut. My fingers shook as I peeled the tape off. The lid stuck for a second, then came free with a whisper of cardboard. Inside? Photos. Piles of them. Not family photos. No, these were candid. Secret. Some printed from a low-quality phone camera, others Polaroids. My stomach turned as I realized what I was looking at. Me. Alone. In my room. Sleeping. In the backyard. In the shower, through the frosted glass. Jesus Christ. Mixed in were slips of paper. Torn out notebook pages. All in my sister's handwriting. I knew it instantly. Those tight little loops, the aggressive periods like stabs. He makes me sick. Mom thinks he's just shy. He's not. He watches me like a freak. Sometimes I want to see how far I can push him. How much it takes before he snaps. There were drawings too, my old sketches, defaced. Scribbled over with words like liar, loser, parasite. I nearly dropped the box. And then at the bottom, folded neatly, was a school disciplinary form. My name on it. Dated November 5, 2007. 2 days after the video. Reason: inappropriate behavior toward a sibling. Suspension: 3 days. Signed by my parents. She had planned it. She'd filmed me. Made me the villain. Then baited me into reacting, and when I did, she went to the school counselor with a black eye and crocodile tears. And they believed her. All of them did. My parents had grounded me for losing control. My teachers had looked at me differently. I remember being called into the principal's office, sweating, shaking, thinking I'd actually done something wrong. But I hadn't. She did. And now I had the proof. Not just of the manipulation, but of the abuse. That's when I knew this didn't end in the attic. This was going to court. I didn't sleep that night. I laid out everything: photos, papers, the camcorder, the letter that led me there, and took pictures, high-resolution scans, whatever I could manage. I emailed them all to myself, backed them up to 3 cloud drives, and encrypted a USB drive I wore on a lanyard under my shirt like it was a holy relic. Then I called Marissa. Now, Marissa wasn't just a lawyer. She was the lawyer. Sharp as hell, ex-prosecutor turned private, specialized in emotional abuse and family law. We hadn't talked since college, but I remembered one drunken party where she said, "If you ever need someone to burn your enemies to the ground legally, call me." So I did. She picked up on the second ring. "Jake?" I hadn't even introduced myself. I told her everything, well, as much as someone can fit in a breathless 20-minute call, and sent her a folder of what I had. There was silence on her end for a long minute. Then she said, "You weren't kidding." By the end of the week, I was sitting in her office, the shoebox on the table between us. "I'm going to ask you something difficult," she said, leafing through the photos like she was examining evidence in a murder trial. "Are you looking for closure, or are you looking for justice?" I didn't hesitate. Justice. With receipts. She smiled like a shark. Good. Because I think we can get both. The first step was the restraining order. That was the easiest. Preponderance of evidence, she said, holding up one of the notes where my sister called me a parasite. Judges eat this stuff up. The second step? Reopening the school incident. The disciplinary form was over a decade old, but schools are terrible at purging records. We filed a Freedom of Information request. And sure enough, 3 weeks later, I had a scanned copy of the full report. It included a counselor's notes. Taylor claimed I'd cornered her in the basement, shoved her, and said, "I could make you disappear." Except I never said that. But I knew exactly where she got it from, my own journal. The phrase, "I wish she would disappear," had appeared in one of my entries that she had stolen and read. She plagiarized her victimhood. The third step was harder. We needed corroboration. Witnesses. So I made a list. Anyone who had ever seen something weird. Teachers, neighbors, even that one guy from gym class who once saw me walk into the locker room with a black eye and didn't say anything. Some said no. Too long ago. Too awkward. We were just kids. But some said hell yes. There was a janitor named Mr. Collins who remembered finding my drawings in the trash with swastikas drawn on them. He thought it was vandalism. There was my old English teacher who remembered me going from straight A's to near failure after that basement incident. He was like a light switch, she said in her written statement. Something turned off. And then came the bombshell, a classmate named Brianna, who emailed me after hearing what I was doing. "Jake, I don't know if this helps, but your sister once told me you were psychotic and obsessed with her, and that your parents were scared of you." I didn't believe her, but I also didn't do anything. I'm sorry. I can write that down, if it helps. I hope you burn her to the ground. I printed it. Marissa compiled everything into a 200-page binder labeled Case File JHVTH in big block letters. She tapped it once, leaned back, and said, "Let's go ruin someone's day." You know that weird ache in your chest when you revisit a place that once felt like home, but now it just feels haunted? That's what walking into the courtroom felt like. My parents were there. Of course they were. Mom wore pearls like this was a brunch and not a hearing on whether or not their daughter had spent years gaslighting and psychologically torturing their son. Dad had that same, "let's just get through this" frown he wore at every Christmas dinner. And Taylor? Taylor smiled at me. Full teeth. Like this was a game we were about to play and she already knew she'd win. "You look great," she said as I walked by. "Therapy's really working for you." I didn't respond. Just sat down beside Marissa, who slid me a folder and whispered, "She doesn't know we found the hospital records." That snapped me out of it. See, Marissa had subpoenaed records from a brief psych eval Taylor had undergone after her sophomore year of college. The school had forced it after she'd allegedly threatened her roommate. It had been buried, marked, inconclusive, and confidential. But the notes were telling. Manipulative tendencies. History of deception. Difficulty establishing empathy. It wasn't a diagnosis. But it painted a picture. And in a civil court, pictures matter. The judge was middle-aged, tired-looking, glasses low on his nose. "We're here to begin preliminary proceedings in the matter of Hayes versus Hayes." He looked between us. "Charming." Taylor's lawyer, some slick guy named Rick who definitely used the word bro, unironically stood up first. "Your Honor, we're arguing that this entire case is built on ancient history. There's no active threat. My client has moved on. She's a married woman. Divorced." I said out loud before I could stop myself. The silence that followed? Delicious. Rick looked at me like I'd spat on his shoes. "Your Honor, please instruct the plaintiff to remain silent." Marissa stood. "Your Honor, we're prepared to show video evidence, corroborated statements, and records that demonstrate a consistent, deliberate campaign of psychological abuse culminating in a manufactured school disciplinary record and a falsified narrative that caused lasting damage to my client's reputation and mental health. Furthermore, this was not ancient history. The subject was referenced in emails as recently as last year, where Ms. Hayes admitted to fabricating elements of her past to justify receiving family trust disbursements under false pretenses. Translation? Taylor lied to the family lawyer about me being unfit to inherit. She took my place in the will. We had the emails. We had the audio. And we had her voice saying, "He's not stable enough to handle that kind of responsibility. Trust me, I know my brother." I watched her face as that audio played. She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Just crossed her legs and smirked. This was a warm-up, and she knew it. The judge agreed to move the case forward. And then he said something that made her lose the smirk entirely. We will also review submitted psychological evaluations and may call for updated assessments. Both parties will be expected to comply. She hated that. She loathed being seen, labeled, quantified. Because once someone understood her, they couldn't be manipulated anymore. Outside the courtroom, my parents tried to corner me. Jake, Mom said, like she'd just seen me in the grocery store. We had no idea it was this serious. You watched it happen, I said. You just thought it was funny. Dad shook his head. We thought it was sibling rivalry. You two were always intense. You were silent while I got suspended for something I didn't do. You pushed her, Mom snapped. She came home crying. No. She cried on cue. You just never noticed it always happened after she got caught. They had no response. They never did. Marissa pulled me away before I said something I couldn't take back. In the car, I finally exhaled. They're not the worst part, I said. Marissa nodded. I know. Because the worst part? I still wanted them to believe me. Discovery phase was war. Marissa hit them with document requests so hard Rick tried to delay the case twice, citing client emotional distress and unreasonable scope. The judge denied both motions. If Ms. Hayes truly believes she's innocent, he said, this discovery will only help her. I wish I'd recorded her face when he said that. We got access to emails, therapy logs, even a burner phone she'd used to message anonymous accounts harassing me on old forums I hadn't visited since college. That was the moment I realized she never stopped. Even after I left, even after I cut her off, she'd kept tabs. Created fake accounts just to poke the wound. The posts were subtle. Funny how some people rewrite history to make themselves victims. Some siblings really need therapy, lol. Nothing directly traceable, until the data dump included IP logs that matched her home Wi-Fi. Stupid mistake. Meanwhile, Marissa was building the emotional abuse case like an engineer designing a bomb. Every lie, every smear campaign, every false accusation, organized, timestamped, and backed with witness statements. We even found a guidance counselor from my junior year who still had notes marked. Student may be experiencing psychological aggression at home, denies but shows signs of hypervigilance. Taylor's side tried to discredit me. Mr. Hayes is clearly traumatized, Rick argued at the next hearing. But trauma does not equal truth. Memories warp. Emotions distort. We cannot punish a woman for things her brother feels happened. Marissa stood up so fast her chair skidded. Then let's not rely on feelings, she said. Let's rely on this. She handed the judge a USB. Inside? A video file. We hadn't played it yet. We were saving it. It was from the camcorder. The one labeled Thanksgiving. The tape rolled in court. Taylor was 17. I was 19, home from college. The video had been filmed in secret, my voice whispering as I set the camcorder down on the bookshelf. On screen, she stood behind me, mimicking my stutter. Did you miss me? She said to my back, giggling. Bet you cried in your dorm, huh? I didn't respond. She threw a spoon at me. It hit my shoulder. Say something, weirdo. My on-screen self just kept carving turkey. Then she pulled her ultimate move. She walked over and whispered in my ear, loud enough for the mic to catch. One day, I'm going to convince Mom you touched me in your sleep. And she'll believe me. There was an audible gasp in the courtroom. The judge paused the video. How long have you had this recording? Since that day, I said. I never showed it. I was afraid. Afraid of what? That she'd actually do it. The judge nodded slowly. Noted. That video became the turning point. Even Taylor's lawyer looked shaken. My parents? White as ghosts. For the first time in my entire life, I saw doubt flicker in my mother's eyes. Taylor didn't look at me once as we left court that day. But she did throw up in the trash can outside the building. And that? That felt like the first breath of fresh air in years. 2 weeks before the trial, I got a voicemail. It was Taylor. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, cracked like a mirror after the first punch. Jake, I know you hate me. I don't blame you. I don't know how it got this far. I was a kid. I was stupid. But I'm not that person anymore. Please. Just meet me. One coffee. No lawyers. I stared at my phone for a long time. Then I played the voicemail again, this time from Marissa. She listened, then raised an eyebrow. You're not actually thinking about it, are you? No, I said. But I want to know why she sent it now. She's scared, Marissa said flatly. We're 2 weeks from opening statements. We've got her on video. We've got a decade of psychological warfare printed in 12-point font and bound in legal folders. She's not trying to make amends, Jake. She's trying to survive. Still, the voicemail crawled under my skin like a worm. Because here's the thing. Part of me, a big, broken, betrayed part, still wanted her to mean it. Still wanted her to be the sister she pretended to be when I was 6, and she made us matching Halloween costumes out of cardboard and duct tape. Still wanted that version of her to be real. But I'd killed that illusion the day I watched her joke about framing me for molestation on camera. The day of trial came with overcast skies and the kind of heavy silence that makes your ears ring. We walked into the courthouse like we were headed into battle. Opening statements started with Rick trying to spin my evidence as a well-curated smear campaign. He said I was obsessed with proving I was the victim. He said Taylor was deeply misunderstood. Marissa followed that by playing the full basement video. The original one. 15-year-old me whispering about the shoebox. You could hear my sister shouting upstairs. You could hear how scared I was. That was when the mood in the courtroom shifted. We called witnesses. My old guidance counselor. The janitor. The English teacher. Even Brianna, who flew in from another state to say, under oath, Taylor Hayes was the most convincing liar I've ever met. And I let her lie about Jake because it was easier. I won't do that again. Taylor sat still the entire time, lips pressed into a thin, fake smile. Until we reached the inheritance documents. My parents had, years earlier, made Taylor the sole beneficiary of a small trust fund left by our grandmother. Not because Grandma intended it that way, but because Taylor had told the family lawyer I was unstable, possibly violent, and emotionally erratic. We had that statement in writing. I watched my mom cover her mouth with both hands as the lawyer read it aloud. Then Dad stood up and walked out of the courtroom. Not in protest. In shame. That was the moment I realized something. This wasn't just about Taylor anymore. It never had been. It was about truth. And all the people who let her bury it. The verdict came in after 3 long, breathless days. The jury ruled in my favor. They called it intentional infliction of emotional distress, with aggravated malice. The wording was cold, clinical, but it hit like a wrecking ball. The judge ordered Taylor to pay damages. Significant ones. Enough to cover my therapy bills, lost earnings, and then some. Enough that her lawyer looked like he'd swallowed a grenade. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the court finally saying, out loud, on record, what no one had ever dared say before. It wasn't my fault. Taylor didn't say a word when the verdict was read. Just stared straight ahead, fists clenched in her lap, like if she didn't move, none of it would be real. She never looked at me. Not even once. My parents didn't either. They weren't even in the room when the jury returned. After Dad walked out mid-trial, he never came back. I heard through a cousin that they've gone quiet, whatever that means. No apology. No letter. Just silence. The same kind they gave me for most of my childhood. Taylor appealed, of course. She always had to have the last move. The appeal failed. 2 months later, she filed for bankruptcy. Ethan, her ex-husband, sent me a note during the proceedings. Short. Just 1 sentence. I'm sorry I didn't believe you when you warned me. I still haven't answered. What do you say to someone who only believes you after the fire? I used the settlement to take a sabbatical. Traveled. Got my certification in trauma-informed counseling. I volunteer now with an organization that helps estranged siblings navigate court cases. Full circle, I guess. Sometimes people ask if I ever hear from her. I do. Every couple of months, another email shows up. Always the same subject line. Can we talk? I never open them. I don't need to. Because I know exactly what's inside, a trap disguised as a hug. And me? I don't fall for traps anymore. I keep the camcorder in a locked drawer. The shoebox is gone, burned actually. Marissa said I should frame something symbolic instead. I picked the old photo of me crossing the finish line at my high school track meet, sweaty, exhausted, but smiling. That was the day I placed second. My sister had told me second place was just first loser. But she was wrong. Second place meant I kept running even when it hurt. Even when they wanted me to stop. It meant I didn't quit. Now, when I walk into my apartment, breathe in deep, and feel air fill my lungs without panic or pain, I think of that 15-year-old kid, whispering into a camcorder, terrified no one would ever believe him. I wish I could tell him this. They believed you. It took years. But they finally heard you. And you? You never needed her to hand you the inhaler. You learned how to breathe on your own.